It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday. I was deep into a case brief in my home office when the yelling started. At first, I tried to ignore it. But the second I heard my daughter's name shouted by a voice I recognized, Margaret Drayton, our overbearing HOA president, I rushed to the window. My stomach dropped. There, in our backyard, stood Margaret and two massive men in dark uniforms, complete with shiny badges that looked suspiciously cheap. My daughter Ava, 16 years old, deaf since birth, was on the patio with her therapy dog, Juno. She was practicing her sign language and speech with a specialized app on her tablet, one we'd spent months acquiring and customizing. Juno lay at her feet, calm but alert. I said, "Turn it off." Margaret shrieked, her face red. Ava looked up, confused, trying to read her lips. One of the men smirked. "I think she can't hear you. These special kids never do." Without warning, the second man ripped the tablet out of Ava's hands. She stood up, reaching for it. "Please," she said, her speech soft and slightly unclear. "That's mine." "Special or not," Margaret snapped, stepping forward. "This is a violation of HOA noise regulations. Your weird noises and that machine are disturbing everyone." Her weird noises were speech therapy exercises. The app wasn't even playing sound, just sign language videos Ava mimicked to improve her skills. Juno sensed her anxiety and stood between Ava and the intruders, his body tense. One of the men raised what looked like a baton and jabbed it in Juno's direction. "Control your animal, or I will." Ava, now panicked, tried signing, "Stop," and "Service dog," over and over. "He helps me," she said aloud. "I don't care what it is," Margaret spat. "The HOA doesn't allow animals outside unless leashed and hidden. And those hand movements are unsettling the neighbors." The man holding the tablet let it drop to the concrete. It shattered. Ava gasped and dropped to her knees, scrambling to gather the broken pieces. The first man grabbed her by the arm and yanked her upright. "This is an official citation," he said, waving a paper in her face. $7.50 fine. HOA Code 8.4. Disturbing visual and auditory piece. Ava couldn't hear any of it. She looked around, helpless, tears running down her cheeks. Margaret shouted again, "Stop that hand flapping. That bizarre behavior is why property values are dropping." The second man pulled out handcuffs. "If she resists again, we take her in." That was it. I bolted through the back door, phone already recording. "Take your hands off my daughter," I shouted, storming into the yard. They froze for a moment. Margaret recovered first. "Mr. Caldwell," she said coldly, "your daughter is violating several HOA. Those men are not real officers." I cut her off. "You are trespassing. You are assaulting a disabled minor. And I suggest you start walking." The taller man puffed out his chest. "We have the authority." "You have no authority here," I snapped, keeping the camera pointed at them. "I'm David Caldwell. I'm a senior partner at Caldwell and Rios, and I specialize in ADA compliance and disability discrimination law." Margaret's face paled. "They have badges. They're authorized by the HOA to do what? Terrorize a deaf child? Destroy her therapy equipment? Threaten a registered service animal? Impersonate law enforcement?" I knelt beside Ava, who was shaking. Red marks were already forming on her arm. I signed to her quickly. "Are you hurt?" She nodded, still crying. "She assaulted an officer." The man with the cuffs tried again. "You're not an officer," I said, ice in my voice. "Impersonating one is a felony. And my daughter was using American Sign Language to communicate, which is protected by federal law." I pointed to Juno's vest. "That is a certified service animal. Threatening him is another federal crime." The men exchanged nervous glances. The one who smashed the tablet mumbled, "We were just doing what Ms. Drayton told us." "Good," I said, my phone still recording. "That confession just made you her co-conspirators. You have 30 seconds to leave before I call the real police." "This is still HOA business," Margaret tried again. "My daughter is deaf," I interrupted quietly. "Those noises are her learning to speak. Those hand movements are her voice. You violated the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Fair Housing Act, and state law." The shorter man tugged his partner's sleeve. "Let's go. Now." As they retreated, Margaret turned at the gate. "This isn't over, Caldwell. The board will. They'll be receiving a lawsuit Monday morning," I said calmly. "And so will the DA's office. I hope you've got a good attorney." Ava collapsed into my arms. Her tablet was shattered, her hands trembling. Why do they hate me? She signed. Because I can't hear? My heart broke. I signed back. They fear what they don't understand. But they're about to learn. That night, I filed for an emergency restraining order, and Judge Carmichelho ruled favorably in several of my cases, granted it within the hour. I called Captain Monroe at the local precinct. Officers came that night, took Ava's statement, photographed her bruises. Then I called someone else, Sasha Lynn, a reporter I'd worked with before. HOA president hires fake cops to terrorize deaf girl, I said. I have it all on video. By morning, the story exploded. The imposters were arrested and quickly confessed. Margaret had paid them through a shady security firm, ordered them to scare the weird girl into following rules. The HOA board's attorney practically begged me for a meeting. The board didn't know, he claimed. I slid a folder across the table. 5 prior complaints. All ignored. He swallowed. What do you want? My terms are non-negotiable. I handed him the settlement. Removal of the entire HOA board, rewritten bylaws requiring disability representation, full funding for Ava's therapy, and construction of a communication center, Ava's Haven. 6 months later, Ava stood beside me, beaming, as the doors of her center opened to the public. Inside, dozens of deaf and hard-of-hearing children learned with state-of-the-art equipment. Reporters filled the room. Ava turned to me and signed. You turned something awful into something beautiful. My phone buzzed. The headline lit the screen. Former HOA president pleads guilty to civil rights violations. Sentenced to 2 years, community service at deaf school. I showed Ava, and she smiled for the first time in months. The best revenge, I signed, is turning pain into power. Around us, laughter, signing, and hope filled the air. On the wall above, in bold letters Ava had chosen herself, were the words, "Our differences are our strength."